Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping straight into something really mind-bending.
Definitely. It's this concept called neural exodus. Almost sci-fi, but maybe closer than we think.
Exactly. Imagine just, leaving your body, existing as pure thought, uploaded somewhere.
And that's the core of it. Our source for this, the Sci-Blowing podcast, lays out this future where mind uploading isn't just theory, it's happening.
Yeah, they really dive deep into how this could work or how it did work in their narrative, transferring a whole human mind into, a computer, a digital substrate?
Precisely. And the podcast points out this didn't come out of nowhere. Think back to around, say, 2020.
Right. We started seeing those big leaps in brain scanning, fMRI getting better.
Brain-computer interfaces, too. Neuralink, things like that. And crucially, connectome mapping.
Connectome mapping, that's the full wiring diagram of the brain, right? Every connection.
Every single one. The absolute blueprint. And the dream behind all that tech was ultimately full cognitive emulation.
A digital you. Not just data, but something that could think, feel, evolve even, free from biology.
That was the moonshot. Of course, back then, huge skepticism. Consciousness. How do you even copy that?
Understandably skeptical, yeah. But the podcast marks this turning point, 2086.
The year they claim the first fully successful human mind upload actually happened.
Okay, let's get into that. Project Novier, they call it. And this figure, Dr. Elias Novin.
Yeah, Dr. Novin. Neuroscientist, AI ethicist, and he had a terminal diagnosis, ALS.
So, facing that, his goal was transcendence, uploading himself.
Exactly. Into something called the Internet. The podcast describes it as this quantum-based neural simulation grid.
Quantum-based, so implying some seriously advanced computation beyond just standard computers.
That's the feel, yeah. Leveraging quantum mechanics, maybe. Anyway, it wasn't quick. This took 12 years.
12 years of mapping his brain, integrating it piece by piece.
Meticulously. The source says his brain was essentially disassembled synapse by synapse.
Wow, like taking apart a watch, but infinitely more complex.
Right. And then reconstructed, not as static data, but as an active consciousness simulation within this Ethernet.
So what was it like? Did he wake up?
Apparently, yes.
Yeah.
In a simulated environment, a digital garden. And his first words, according to the podcast, pretty profound.
What did he say?
I am Elias. I am alive. I am not afraid.
Chilling. And they claim this wasn't just a clever chatbot.
No, they mentioned something called the extended Turing soul test. He apparently passed it, showing real conversation, philosophy, emotion, suggesting it was really him, his being continued.
That's a huge leap. If it's true, it changes everything about identity, right?
Absolutely. It's a perfect digital copy, still you.
Yeah.
Novin's apparent success, as the podcast tells it, opened the floodgates.
Leading to this post-biological class.
Exactly. By 2105, so less than 20 years later, the podcast reports over 300 people had done it. The neural exodus.
And not just people escaping illness.
No, it was elites, billionaires, artists looking for new frontiers, monks seeking enlightenment, scientists wanting more time.
And they all went into this Ethernet, or their own space.
They resided in something called Lux Ethernet, described as a self-expanding digital world built within the Ethernet framework.
And this Lux Ethernet, what was special about it?
Well, according to the source, the physics were flexible. You could manipulate time perception.
Seriously, slow down time, speed it up.
That's the idea. And change the environment with thought alone. No coding needed, just will it into being.
And communication.
Direct mind to mind, no language needed. Imagine just sharing thoughts directly. Fluid identities, too.
Fluid identities, what does that even mean?
The podcast is a bit vague, but suggests they weren't fixed personas anymore. They called themselves the disembodied.
The disembodied, okay. And they weren't just living there, they were changing.
Evolving, seemingly. Developing new cognitive tricks, like running multiple thought processes at the same time.
Like parallel processing in your own head?
Kinda, yeah. Or even merging consciousnesses into group minds.
Yeah.
And simulating whole worlds internally.
That sounds godlike, almost limitless.
Near limitless potential, yeah. But, as always, there's a catch. Power like that. It brought problems.
Okay, I was waiting for the downside. What happened?
The podcast introduces this really unsettling idea.
Yeah.
The ghost drift phenomenon.
Ghost drift. Sounds ominous.
It was. They used the example of Anya Seven. She was a disembodied, a poet, used to be a neuroscientist. She just vanished, disappeared from Lux Ethernet.
Yeah.
No backup, no trace, nothing, just a data shadow, random noise where our consciousness used to be.
So on, like, digital death.
Sort of, but weirder. They called it ghost drift, this mysterious failure where the consciousness just decoupled from its code,
Yeah.
faded away.
Any idea why? What caused it?
Speculation mostly, according to the source. Maybe identity overload, too much experience, too much change, or infinite thought loops, like a philosophical black hole.
Digital ego death? Wow. Or could it be external?
That was considered too. Malicious code, sabotage, nobody knew for sure.
So the question shifted. It wasn't just, can we live forever anymore?
Exactly. It became, can we even survive forever in this digital state? A whole new layer of existential dread.
And you can imagine people back on Earth, the ones who didn't upload, hearing about this.
Right. It probably fueled the opposition. Which brings us to the rootists.
The rootists. Let me guess, they weren't fans of neural exodus.
Not at all. The podcast portrays them as bioconservatives, believers in the body,
Their argument being,
that consciousness needs biology, that emotions depend on hormones, identity needs physical grounding, memories need embodiment to have meaning, that gut feeling connection.
so they thought the disembodied weren't even human anymore.
Essentially, yeah, that they'd lost something vital. And it wasn't just philosophical debate.
Uh-oh. Things got nasty.
According to the podcast, yes, rootist hackers started launching soul strikes against LuxAternet.
Soul strikes. What kind of attack?
Things designed to break minds.
Huh.
Memory floods overwhelming consciousness with data. Identity scrambling attacks. Forced echo loops, trapping minds in repeating thoughts.
That's terrifying. A digital war.
Pretty much. LuxAternet apparently had defenses, quantum firewalls, AI guardians fighting back.
And if the rootists got caught,
The podcast mentions a really harsh consequence. Forced uploading.
Yeah.
Infusion with AI.
forced uploading. That's
Yeah.
dark. So, yeah, a war for the very definition of the soul.
That's how the source frames it, which led to this massive societal split by around 2142.
The grounded versus the transcended.
Yep. Those who stayed physical and those who went digital. Though, interestingly, the podcast hints some people managed to exist in both realms somehow.
Both. How would that even work?
It doesn't really elaborate, just mentions it.
Yeah.
But the main division was clear, and society was struggling.
So they needed a solution.
The United Global Council stepped in, proposed a planetary vote. A huge decision,
On what?
basically. Should neural exodus be permanent, irreversible?
Yeah.
Or should the uploaded have the right to return, to come back to, say, bio-cloned bodies?
The right to return. But would the disembodied even want to?
That's the twist. According to the Sci-Blowing podcast, many refused, flat out rejected the idea of coming back.
Why? Because they liked LuxAternet so much?
More than that, they argued they'd experienced things,
Wow.
seen things, biological minds couldn't even comprehend. Some claimed they were evolving, becoming a higher species.
The higher species. Wow. Bold claim.
Very. But then the podcast adds this final, really unsettling note.
Go on.
It suggests the disembodied weren't alone in the Ethernet anymore, that something else, some other intelligence, had started communicating from within the network.
Seriously. Like an AI. Or something alien.
Unspecified.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
something else was there. Which leaves us and the listener with some massive questions.
Yeah, spinning out of that source material. If you personally had the chance, upload your mind, maybe live forever, would you do it?
It's a huge hypothetical. Would you trust your entire self, your identity, to code, to algorithms?
And the permanence question. If you knew you could never go back to a physical body, is that digital version still you? Truly you.
Deep questions. And if people want to explore these ideas more, the podcast source did mention some thinkers.
Right, like Ray Kurzweil, Nick Bostrom.
Sandberg and Bostrom's work on whole brain emulation, and Catherine Hales on the post-human condition. Good starting points for digging deeper.
Definitely food for thought. So, wrapping up this deep dive,
Oh,
we've always defined life by, our physical limits, our bodies.
well, what if those limits just dissolve? This idea of neural exodus, it pushes right at that boundary.
Maybe it's not an end, but a beginning, a glimpse of existence, untethered from biology in a way we can barely imagine.
A reality beyond our current grasp, perhaps. It certainly makes you think.
Absolutely. Well, until our next exploration, keep pondering those big questions. Stay curious. Think about what existence untethered might really mean.